Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. You know, Chevy invented that little jingle to sell cars to Americans. I'm wondering, how successful really were they? Since most Americans I know are more interested in football, French fries, pizza pie, and Honda cars. Speaking of Chevrolet, let me take you back to everyone's favorite year of the classic Chevrolet, 1957. Little Jimmy Meyer was just 6 years old. I was a third oldest of 5 boys growing up in a Leave It to Beaver neighborhood. My 2 oldest brothers were already very well accomplished Little League stars. Unfortunately for me, they had already drained all of that talent from the family team. But don't get me wrong, I loved baseball. I was a big Reds fan. That year, the Reds had an outfield of Frank Robinson, Gus Bell, Wally Post. First base was Big Ted Kluszewski. They were a home run hitting machine. And like every little 6-year-old, I dreamed of being a baseball great like my heroes. Unfortunately, those dreams were soon replaced by stark reality. It happened when my father enrolled me in first-year Little League. Here in Cincinnati, we call it novel. My older brothers, God bless them, they really tried to turn me into a baseball star. Unfortunately, the raw material they were working with was just really too raw because I couldn't throw, I couldn't hit, I couldn't field, I couldn't run. I was terrified of baseball. I knew nothing of the rules of the game, but I did love the idea of being on a team with a whole bunch of guys my age that could be my friends. And I really loved the idea of getting soft drinks after the game. I wanted to be at the game, but just do it in the game. Now, my manager was the best kind. He didn't care about winning or losing. All he cared about was whether or not every boy on the team learned something and had a good time. And it's a good thing he didn't care about winning. We didn't win a single game that entire year. And guess who was the worst player on the worst team in the entire league? Let me give you an example. Very first game. Please don't put me in, coach. Please don't put me in, coach. Well, luckily for me, he didn't start me in the game. But by the bottom of the 5th and final inning, when we already had 2 outs, we were already losing about 100-1, he said, let me put Jimmy Meyer up to bat. It couldn't hurt. It could hurt me. There was another 6-year-old throwing a baseball at me as hard as he possibly could. So here I am. I'm up at the plate. The first pitch comes whizzing over my head, over the catcher's head, over the umpire's head, and by the time it hits the backstop, I am a cringing fetal mass 2 feet outside the batting box. Well, and the umpire yells, ball 1, which I had no idea what that meant. So the manager picks me up, dusts me off, stands me up there, puts me on my batting stance and says, okay, Jimmy, now I want you to swing at the next pitch no matter where it is. Okay, coach. I was terrified. But luckily for me, the pitcher was really bad because the ball was so far outside. I swung as hard as I could and I missed, and I tripped over my feet, and there I am, spread eagle, right on home plate. Strike 1, the umpire calls. 1-1. I had no idea what that meant. So, manager comes over, picks me up, dusts me off, says, okay, Jimmy, now I only want you to swing at a pitch if you can reach it. Okay, coach. I'm no fool. I wasn't reaching any pitch. So I'm standing there. After dodging 3 more pitches that were nowhere near me or home plate, the umpire thankfully yells, ball 4, take your base. Well, I had no idea what that meant, so I'm still there like this. And the manager walks over and says, Jimmy, that means you get to go down there to first base. See, Mr. Johnson, he's your first base coach. You just go on down there, stay on the base, and do whatever he tells you, okay? Okay, coach, I can do that. So I joyfully skipped on down to first base, thrilled with the idea that I was no longer going to be assaulted by another 6-year-old with a baseball. Get on to first base. The coach says, okay, Jimmy, take a lead off. What's that mean, coach? See that? That's second base. You take 2 steps towards second base, you focus on that base, and as soon as I yell run, you run as hard as you can and stop at second base. Can you do that? Yeah, coach, I can do that. So I'm bound to get determined to succeed. I take 2 steps towards second. I focus on second base. I've got my eyes locked on second base. And while I've got my eyes locked on second base, a pitcher walks over and takes me out. My team's crying on the bench. The first baseman and the pitcher are laughing their heads off at me, and Mr. Johnson's, well, Jimmy, why did you get back on the base? You never told me to, Coach. Well, needless to say, that was my first and last year in organized baseball. But I continued to play neighborhood baseball. My brother, my oldest brother, organized the 14 kids ages 5 to 10 in our neighborhood into 2 well-balanced teams that would play baseball all summer long in what we lovingly called Cowpie Park, which was the pasture behind our neighborhood. And we called it Cowpie Park because we had to shoot the cows off to play. And we would take the dried cow chips and we'd stack them up to be bases. Unfortunately, we still had to dodge the wet cow pies while we played. You don't want to feel a ball that gets hit into wet cow pie. Well, that summer, I did set a record. I set the record for the most consecutive strikeouts in a game. As a batter. Yeah, as a batter. I actually struck out 13 straight times to record every out our team recorded in the game. We won because after I struck out in the bottom of the 5th inning, the rest of my team scored the winning run. Now, don't feel sorry for me. Not all my baseball memories were terrible and embarrassing and humiliating. I actually kept playing at Cowpie Park for the rest of my childhood, and by the time I got to high school, I had increased my skill to the point where I could be a slightly below average player on a convincingly mediocre softball team.